No privacy is left in this country today. Your medical privacy is gone, your financial privacy is gone, and now they don't need search warrants at all to search what we do. The founders would be aghast at what we have given up. A message ought to be sent that the status quo should not be tolerated, and we need some real changes in this country. The Constitution is a pretty good document. It's just too bad we don't use it once in a while up in Washington. But we got into this mess because for 100 years, a long time before any of us were in charge, we drifted away from the precise understanding or desire to follow the Constitution. Whether it was the war issue, the monetary issue, the entitlement system, the principle of the republic versus pure democracy, we have slipped a long way from this. The founders were very clear about what their understanding what a republic was all about. It was representative government, it was local government, it was the principles of liberty, and above all, it was to protect the minority. And they warned against slipping into pure democracy. Pure democracy is when rights become relative, when 51% can dominate the minority. So what we really want is a system that protects minorities, minority opinion, and the minority that is most abused in this country today is the individual.
Growing up, it was always kind of talk radio and mainstream media and Fox and whatnot. And you didn't really hear very much about Ron Paul. Like you kind of, in 2008 was really the first time I saw or heard anything about him. And again, that was very little. It wasn't until a friend came to me who has never really been interested in politics and was like, you've got to hear this guy. It's like, well, if John thinks that it's important, John who doesn't care about politics, maybe I should look into this. So I did, and I was hooked. I didn't know half of the things that he was talking about. I had no context for Austrian economics or the wars. I thought we were over there because they hated us because we were free and we had to take care of that. But he started talking, and there was so much consistency, and there were actual principles behind the things that he said.
A lot of people ask me, Dr. Murphy, what do you think of Ron Paul's economic views? Like, does he actually know what he's talking about? And the thing is, you know, you read his books, you look through his speeches and so forth. I mean, the way I put it is he knows a lot more about economics than I know about delivering babies, right? I mean, it's amazing that this was not his first career, that this is just something that, you know, you could say it's a hobby, but obviously it's more of a passion and something he's devoted himself to. So yeah, he is a good economist. He's a better economist than most professional economists, in my opinion. And so it's not just that, like, oh yeah, he's a good guy for getting the message out. It's that he actually articulated the message and made some connections before a lot of other people did. I mean, his intuition, his instincts on things, and to know that, oh no, this thing is not a good idea or whatever. I mean, he knew that stuff a lot of cases before I personally would have, you know. So it's I respect his opinion a lot on these issues, and it's amazing. I suppose it's sort of like when you read the history books about Thomas Jefferson or something, and people just say, oh man, there used to be a time when people were real statesmen, and actually, you know, you might learn something from reading the writings of someone who happened to be in the U.S. federal government, whereas that would seem ridiculous now, except for Ron Paul and perhaps a handful of other people. But it's really amazing that there's this guy who really is a well-educated person on economic theory.
The thing about Ron Paul that's really put off a lot of voters in the Republican Party is his language of moral equivalence. This is it. The fact that he is having us imagine what it would be like if another country did to us what our government does to other countries. And And Americans haven't really thought that way for a long time. So it's frightening, it's upsetting, and it cuts against this mythology that America is kind of somehow better than the rest of the world. And I think America is better, but not inherently. It's better because of what we've done. We've acted better in a lot of ways. We've treated our people better. We've welcomed the refuse of the world to our shores to build a better life, and we have freedom for them to enjoy. But the second you go against that, and the second you violate that overseas, then you're not better anymore. You're behaving badly. And the real clue, the real tell that this moral equivalence issue is what's getting everybody, not everybody, but a large segment of Republican voters, is when in South Carolina at the debate, Ron Paul said, "Why don't we apply the golden rule to foreign policy and only treat other nations the way we would like other nations to treat us?" And he said that, and it's the golden rule. It's from the Bible. And these conservative Christians from the South booed the golden rule. And that's how strong the mythology is, that America can almost do whatever we want, and we'll still be better than everybody else, and it's still okay. I think that's wrong.
Andrew Jackson had a pretty clear-cut idea about America's enemies. Killed them.
Congressman Paul, 30 seconds, please. 30 seconds to respond, since you were mentioned.
My point is if another country does to us what we do others, we're not going to like it very much. So I would say that maybe we ought to consider a golden rule in foreign policy. Don't do to other nations what we don't want to have them do to us. So we endlessly bomb these countries, and then we wonder why they get upset with us, and yet it continues on and on. I mean, this idea that we can't debate foreign policy, then all we have to do is start another war. I mean, it's warmongering. They're building up for another war against Iran, and people can't wait to get in another war. This country doesn't need another war. We need to quit the ones we're in. We need to save the money and bring our troops home.
Governor Romney.
Everybody expects a politician to lie, and that was what was so different about Ron Paul, is he was a straight shooter. And, you know, when I saw him debating in the debates in 2008 and stuff, he was amazing. He was the only guy even saying anything.
Another question about electability. Do you have any, sir? There's always the question as to whether or not you are in fact viable. Your differences with the Republicans with the rest of the Republicans on this stage has raised questions about whether or not you can actually win the Republican nomination, sir.
Well, we've only had 2 little primaries so far, so it's pretty premature to decide which one is going to be the candidate. But, you know, when you think about it, if you measured everything I've ever said, every vote I've ever taken against the Constitution, you know, I'm a strict constitutionalist. So are you suggesting the Republicans should write me off because I'm a strict constitutionalist? I'm the most conservative member here. I have voted, you know, against more spending and waste in government than anybody else. So you're suggesting that I'm not electable and the Republicans don't want me because I'm a strict fiscal conservative? Because I believe in civil liberties? Why should we not be defending civil liberties? And why should we not be talking about foreign policy that used to be the part of the Republican Party? Mr. Republican Robert Taft didn't even want us to be in NATO. And you're saying now that we have to continue to borrow money from China to finance this empire that we can't afford? Let me see if I get this right. We need to borrow $10 billion from China, and then we give it to Musharraf, who's a military dictator who overthrew an elected government, and then we go to war, we lose all these lives promoting democracy in Iraq. I mean, what's going on here? And you're saying that this isn't appealing to Republicans? Where did where did this come about? I think this is a Republican message. I defend the platform. It used to say we got rid of the Department of Education. It doesn't say that. Now, we as Republicans went and doubled the size of the Department of Education. So where have we gone? I think we've lost our way. And then the insinuation that I am less Republican because of that?
Congressman, thank you very much.
I found out about Ron Paul around 2007. And you know, before that, I was, I guess, a neoconservative, but it was basically because I didn't know any better. You know, that's kind of how I was raised. George Bush was a Christian, and the Republicans were basically on the Christian side in general. But you know, it's just it wasn't any good, really. I mean, it's, the reality is that's not really what I believe in. And he basically pulled my head out of the sand and let me realize that what we're doing is wrong. I started studying economics. I started studying history. I started really focusing on you know, what's happened in the past, and oh wow, we're making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And he got me reading the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and how powerful that is. These are not rights that tell the government what, or tell us what we can and can't do. It tells the government what they can and can't do to us. And people let the government trample on their rights every single day, and it drives me nuts. You know, I can't stand it. And you know, it also let me realize that the United States government is probably the biggest terrorist organization in the world. I mean, the fact is, yeah, we lost 3,000 plus people at 9/11. It's a horrible thing. You know, but we talk about terrorism, but we're terrorizing other countries. We've been terrorizing people in Iraq for over 20 years. We've been bombing them for over 20 years. I mean, how would we feel if they were doing the same thing to us? We've killed millions of people around the world, terrorizing people, and then we do it in the name of democracy, when in fact we're really not even spreading democracy. And the United States of America is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic, and we have to realize that. So we're out there bombing people, terrorizing people, all in the name of democracy, all saying that we're fighting the war on terror. It's absurd to me, and it should be absurd to everybody that listens and understands it. You know, we are killing people every single day, multiple people, thousands of people, and it's going to anger some people. It's going to make them mad. If somebody killed my family, I'd be angry. I'd be going after them, and it's upsetting. It's sad, and I really hope that people can open up and see what's really going on, and that's the movement that I think Ron Paul has started, because he's created a peaceful movement. You know, we understand that it's not cool to kill people in other countries in the name of democracy when they haven't done anything to us. You know, Iraq didn't do anything to us. They did nothing. They didn't do anything to us. We put these sanctions on them in the 90s. We bombed them nonstop. We had 9/11 happen. Saddam had nothing to do with 9/11. We go in and invade him. We kill 500,000 people, and it does no good.
The thing that stands out in my mind about Ron Paul is he was the first one to condemn what we were doing in Iraq. And a lot of people seem to have forgotten that lately, but you know, when Colin Powell went before the United Nations and you know, asked for a coalition to be put together, and Bush wanted a declaration of war, you know, for the second Bush to go in there, and this was after 9/11. Ron Paul was probably one of the few, if only, people that stood up and questioned, you know, what in the hell we were doing there, and why are we sending troops there? And it turns out he was right, because I had questions in my own mind, but you know, they didn't have the weapons of mass destruction. And you know, we end up losing thousands of our young soldiers' lives, legs blown off, arms blown off, coming back in caskets. You know, it's like it really just that disturbed me, as far as the way that even the Democrats were aligning themselves versus Ron Paul. And you know, there's a handful of people that saw it for what it was. He was one of them. And that really woke me up as far as this foreign policy and where we were at with the war.
Why wouldn't you expect patriotic veterans who love the Constitution and who love freedom to be the first to stand up and say, you know, we're not going to tolerate this. We've put our lives literally on the line in a foreign land, in a combat zone, for quote-unquote freedom. And I'll be damned. As personally, I'll be damned if I'm going to spend 15 months in Afghanistan trying to secure the peace and freedom for Afghani children, and then come home to my own country and not leave behind a free country for my own children. It makes absolutely no sense. I'm volunteering my service to my country, even though I'm not still in the military. I'm still volunteering my service because I took an oath to the Constitution that I believe in. And I do not believe that we can any longer tolerate the tyranny of our overly powerful and overly aggressive executive branch and federal government in general on the American people. I think it's time for us to assert our rights and force the government to recognize that we do have rights that they are not allowed to infringe upon. And if they are allowed to infringe upon those rights, then why the hell did we ever fight a revolution for independence? A line does have to be drawn in the sand. And sometimes we do have to say, the government has gone too far.
We're not growing up in the same period of time that our grandparents did. You know, even our parents, they grew up in a different world. They had just beaten Hitler. America was prosperous. You know, we're growing up in an America that looks like it has no future. We've been at war for like 50 or 60 years, and we can't even remember with whom, or we're not even sure how many countries it is anymore. We got Americans possibly getting put in jail. You know, we've had Americans killed without a trial. Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki was killed without a trial. He's a 16-year-old boy from Denver. These things, you know, didn't happen to our grandparents' generation. I mean, I'm not trying to say they had an easy go. They had World War II and the Great Depression. They had to really earn what they got. But we're not growing up in the America, hero of the world America. We're growing up in the declining disaster America. So we want someone to tell us the truth so we can fix it fast, because this is our life we're really living, and this is our future we're really squandering.
The Liberty message is a very simple one. Make government smaller. Let's get the government out of people's business. You know, there was a great writer from France in the 1800s named Frederick Bastiat, who wrote a book called The Law. And a lot of liberty-minded people have read that book, and I myself have read it and have been heavily influenced by it. But he said in that book, he said that any legislator that makes a law, he produces force on the people. And so if any law is made that negatively affects somebody's life, liberty, or property, then you need to vote no for that law. And that's and Ron Paul's been great, because his track record as a congressman is he's voted no against a lot of legislation. Maybe he liked a lot of parts of that legislation, but maybe there was one part that negatively affected somebody's life, liberty, or property. And when he saw that, he immediately voted no for the whole thing. And he even got the nickname in Congress as Dr. No. Since he was an OBGYN, he was a doctor, and they called him Dr. No because he voted no a lot of times, because he saw something in some bill that would hurt somebody's life, liberty, or property. And every legislator needs to be responsible and needs to vote that way. They need to know what they're voting on, and they need to make the appropriate steps to make sure that they don't institute a law that's going to hurt somebody's life, liberty, or property.
People my age grew up in a country that was free. You felt good. I grew up in the 50s. You didn't think about things, you know. That was it. And now when I talk to them, it's like their emotion that they talk to me about is, what happened? What happened? Well, I grew up in one country, and now when I wake up in the morning, I look out and it's not the same country. I look off my porch here at the distance, and it's like, I can't imagine what's going on. They become so blatant.
People aren't really that interested in politics, because you go out there and you ask the average person on the street, they don't know who their state representatives are. Half of them don't even know the name of the governor. You know, people don't care. You know, we're losing the country. The whole, things are so bad now. The momentum is so strong, and we're going, I mean, we're like lemmings going off a cliff. And Ron Paul's the only guy saying, wait, stop, you know, and he's unwilling to compromise with these thieves that come in to try and buy and take advantage of politicians and promise them, you know, the sky's the limit. And he won't do it, because he does care. He's got integrity. There's something real in him, and nobody else is offering that. And you can see that when you go to his rallies. I mean, everybody else is like bussing people in from, you know, other cities and stuff like that just to have a crowd to even talk to. Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich, Santorum. And Ron Paul is pulling thousands and thousands of people that are freaking out and enthusiastic and wanting to hear what he has to say. They're waking up. They're paying attention. You know, everybody wants a cause. They want a reason to get up in the morning. They want something to fight for, you know, and we're literally in the battle for the soul of this country.
In the latter part of last year, I was feeling a little discouraged about our political system, and I play in a band called the Access Experience. My guitarist, Michael Jam Smith, has been a libertarian since I've known him. We've been playing together for about 4 years. We are Jimi Hendrix tribute band, by the way. And I had voted for Obama and had sorely repented of my choice, but I didn't know which direction to take because I was completely turned off by the Republican Party, the Democratic Party. I couldn't tell them apart, and I had no clue as to what to do next. And he said, Derek, check out Ron Paul. And that was the beginning of my journey. I started reading everything that I could about Ron Paul and the way he articulates his constitutional principles. I just can't argue with that. He became the only choice. And I no longer have to vote for the lesser of two evils.
I grew up very military family, very Christian perspective, and so I was very patriotic to the country, and as a child I didn't really know what that meant but to wave a flag and say USA and support our troops. It wasn't until high school when I really met Mandy that I really got into politics. She really opened my mind into, you know, talking about the different things that are going on in the country. And even then, I had a very, very conservative thought process of how the country's supposed to work. And, you know, it's supposed to be about Christianity and, you know, supporting these wars. And I felt like in order to support the troops, I had to agree with the war on Iraq. And, you know, I was very scared for my family going over there. So I knew that they needed that support. And it took me a long time. I mean, what, like 10 years? I mean, really, it's been the past 6 months or so that I've really been against the wars and understanding I can support the troops without supporting the wars. Going back in history, you know, reading about what we have done in other countries, realizing the difference between, you know, isolationists and a non-interventionist, like that was a big turnaround for me in my perspective of foreign affairs for our country. I thought we had to police the world and we had to help these people out. But when you go back in history, like in 1953 in Iran, you really start learning about what impact we have made that has caused so much pain and suffering on ourselves. And it makes me realize that we really have to change the course of this country and stop doing this stuff so that, you know, the future of our children, our grandchildren, they don't have to suffer from choices we're making now.
You kind of think, though, that, you know, as a Republican, that war is good, it's okay to bomb these people, you want to be a tough guy, and you don't want to back down, you don't want to appear weak. But you realize that these are the weak people. Because, you know, their first response is, let's go kill everybody. Let's not talk to them. Let's not negotiate. Let's not do anything but go bomb the living hell out of them. And those are scary, dangerous people. And but most Republicans in West Virginia are like that. They're so pro-military, which is, you know, it's fine to defend our country. And this is where the neocons have gotten confused on Ron Paul. It's great to have a strong national defense, but a strong national offense, I mean, that's crazy. So that was, you know, you started to realize that maybe these neocons are just off their rocker. We know the left-wing Democrats at the university are off their rocker. But then you realize that they're both on the left. So the right-wing Republicans are on the left you know, with the National Socialists, and the Democrats are over there with the Marxists and National Socialists. And we need to redivide that and get our mind straight that, you know, this is reality. And what you teach in public school, what you teach in universities, what you teach in law schools is pretty much a bunch of collectivist left-wing garbage that says take one for the team, serve and sacrifice to a cause greater than yourself. But that cause is not religion, it's not Jesus, it's the state. And that's where they take people's religious values and make them convert their love of Jesus for service and sacrifice to the state of Tennessee, to the federal state. And that is just as crazy as it gets, but people are brainwashed. And the Ron Paul revolution is about peacefully, lovingly waking people up to their own liberty and having them enjoy it. Because most people right now don't even understand their own liberty. In fact, they kind of hate their own liberty, but they don't know they do. And it's a weird, crazy mind, you know, situation, but it's the situation that the country's in, and we're doomed unless we start liberty-minded people start understanding their individual liberty, the Constitution, and what are the right things to do, which are not to use force against anybody, not to use harm against anybody, not to steal from anybody, to have honesty and integrity, and care about people's individual rights.
We were seniors, you know, during 9/11, and the teacher walked in the first day and said that he had decided, you know, in light of the events of September 11th, that he was going to teach this class very differently. And the first day, our assignment was in class to kind of write a definition of what we think government is. And that was the defining moment where I knew that I did not belong in like the Republican column, because people are going around reading their answers. And I mean, I wouldn't say I was embarrassed to read mine, but it was so far, it was just so different from everybody else's. Everybody was saying things like, the government protects you and the government takes care of you, and you know, the government is this warm, fuzzy protector, because we were all kind of in that light of 9/11 and really wanting that security and that comfort. And so everybody was kind of defining government as what we emotionally needed. And you know, my definition was, you know, government is something that you have to watch very closely and, you know, keep the checks and balances so that, you know, you keep it in line and it doesn't get too big, and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And everybody just kind of looked at me like I was the jerk in the room who was unpatriotic. And I just remember being labeled unpatriotic because I believed in liberty. And that was it was just that moment where I realized that I didn't really fit into the mold that everybody else was.
You know, the principles our country was founded on was belief that we're made in the image of our Creator, and He values liberty, and He's the one who gives us liberty. And then hearing all these politicians talking, I just reached an age where I could see through them that they're fake. They don't care about liberty whatsoever. It just became apparent to me. And it was actually in 2008 when I first heard about Ron Paul, and I voted for him because he's the only one that made sense.
I said maybe Ron Paul is gonna be the one to save me. And after all, there's only one Ron Paul. I'm so pushing it a bit there now. There's too many Ron Pauls per capita.
Things started really getting serious when we did the first money bomb.
Meet Ron Paul, winner of the biggest money bomb of this year's Republican presidential campaign. That's what his supporters call it, his money bomb. It means his supporters dropped $4,380,000 in 24 hours. That's $182,500 per hour, $3,042 per second.
Well, thank you for the support. We've always known the message was very powerful, but we didn't know how many people would support it.
I think it was probably a surprise to Dr. Paul himself that this really was a force to be reckoned with, and that we really were going to be doing something.
I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about Santorum. Let's bullet been all the road we have to walk and wind. And all the lies that God has said are blinding, because the media is blinding us. Because the media is cutting off Ron Paul, making it look like he's going away and walking out of an interview. And that didn't happen. And bullet has maybe.
There's a revolution. People are coming around, man. Yeah. Today we're out sign waving. It's just a couple of days before the Republican primary. And what we're really trying to do is just raise awareness, let other voters in Tennessee know that there is a large support, a large group of people, an organized grassroots effort to let people know about Ron Paul, his conservative record. And the thing is, people are coming around. They're seeing through the crony conservatism of Romney and Santorum and Gingrich. They're tired of big government Republicans. A Republican will get in office and spend just like a Democrat. They just use different words. They both want to put our troops in danger in these foreign countries that pose no real threat to us. They both want the government to bail out people. It's just silly, and I think people are finally starting to see through it.
We're just out here to try to tell people, let them know that we're here for Ron Paul. So for people that are already Ron Paul fans, it's kind of a nice little pick-me-up. And for people on the fence, I think it's a nice little thing to see some Ron Paul people out on their Wednesday afternoon on a beautiful day, holding signs in traffic because we care. And you don't see any Santorum or Gingrich people doing this or Romney people doing this because nobody has the kind of motivation that Ron Paul people have. We're here because we want to be. We're here because we love America. And we're here because we want a future.
To me, the thing I like about Ron Paul, as opposed to all these other politicians, is that he sees rights as something that will apply only to an individual, not to one group or the other. And I feel that's very inspiring, because I don't want to feel like I am of less significance in the group that my qualities are ascribed to.
The liberty movement to me was just instinct. I think I was born to think that way.
It's exciting to be around people who are as passionate about liberty and who really want to see this country do the right thing, and that they know what the right thing is. It's very refreshing.
I didn't really start paying attention until after 9/11 to the liberty movement, and it's just slowly grown on me. And then this last time, it's condition critical for the country, and you know, part of it is the military aspect, but it's just one cog in the wheel, I think. But it's a very important cog. You know, we don't want to be another Soviet Union where we have a mighty military and a decrepit economy. It scares me as a veteran to see the way that the politicians have mistreated the military, and I don't believe any of that will change unless we get a game changer in the office.
I personally became aware of Dr. Ron Paul through my association with the Ludwig von Mises Institute. I was down in Auburn, Alabama, and realized that these people were into this guy, this representative from Texas, and he came and gave a talk there, and it was just sort of like a cute little curiosity, like, oh wow, there's somebody in Congress who actually has heard of Austrian economics, so that's interesting. And he was just sort of like our little secret for a while, and then all of a sudden he just explodes on the scene. And what's funny is I'm embarrassed to say this, but when he first was campaigning in 08, I was thinking he should just try to appeal to the college kids by talking about the drug war or, you know, the foreign military engagements, but don't try to bore them with the stuff about monetary policy, because I was a college professor and I put plenty of kids to sleep talking about the Fed, right? So I was thinking, don't go down. And instead, he somehow gets people chanting "End the Fed." I mean, it was the most amazing thing how he somehow, like, he's so square, he's cool, you know, that he's not, people can see that he's authentic. He's not really trying to be, he's just, and they can sense that, you know, this is a really serious issue, and if this guy says we need to learn about the Federal Reserve. So to me, that is the single most important thing he has done, is he has put the Fed in the limelight. I mean, nobody talked about it before him because it was boring. It was just this thing off in the corner that no one wanted to talk about because they didn't even know what it was, and it was so confusing. And now he really has shined a spotlight on it, and I think that it's never going to go away now that, you know, that Bernanke has to go on 60 Minutes to try to repair his credibility, and that, you know, that wouldn't have happened before. So I think that really is Ron Paul's seminal contribution to the economics debate. And it's just funny that he happens to be a politician. You know, that's just amazing that the person who really did this is someone that, you know, normally you wouldn't think would have any economic understanding.
The very first time I heard about Ron Paul was while I was interning at a sales company in Knoxville in East Tennessee during college, and this would have been, oh, I can't remember now which summer this was, and I was seeing little cardboard signs saying, "Who is Ron Paul?" Because I had the internet, it was easy to type his name into a search engine and read about him. And I thought it was cool, but I didn't realize it was going to be something big, that this was the start of a revolution in our country. Then I started to see it grow and hear a little more about it and hear a little more about it, and I ended up hearing from a couple friends on my campus that he was going to be speaking here in Tennessee at the War Memorial Auditorium. And I figured, well, he's this like kind of libertarian politician I'm gonna go listen to him. And it probably changed my life.
When Ron Paul came along, I was basically a neocon. And, you know, I felt certain agreement with people. I didn't understand why we went into Iraq and all that. Then comes along the debates. And there's this guy named Ron Paul. And I thought, who's Ron Paul? And he started talking about blowback and all these weird things. And I thought, he's weird. And I reacted the same way as everyone else did. In general, at the time. Later, I got to thinking about it. I tried to process through what he was saying. You know, we have been over there for 50 years, bombing them. Wouldn't we be mad too? And the more I thought about that, and I thought about his stance on the Constitution, I researched him, I looked up his history. He hasn't varied 1 degree in 35 years. And I suddenly was standing up having to think about this because it was just more than I had hoped for. And within a few months of the debates in 2008, I became an advocate. And then I started Googling him, and I found my friend Dan. They were having Ron Paul rallies here. And so I began attending, and I worked for Ron Paul in the last campaign in 2008, putting signs out and doing all this stuff.
4 more years of the wars, you know what it's good for. Ron Paul for president.
I've always been a musician, a songwriter, and I've been in Nashville about 15 years, but I'm originally from West Virginia. And so I go back and forth, but about 10 years ago, a couple friends of mine here in town gave me a couple books. One was The Creature from Jekyll Island, and about the Federal Reserve scam and you know, why it's, you know, morally wrong and just a horrible, horrible, evil organization, along with most of the federal government. So my friend said you start to pick up the rug just a little tiny bit, and you look under, and you just see just the horrible, horrible stuff that's under the rug. And I kind of didn't believe him, but as you start to understand true liberty, which is what the country was founded on, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, is all about individual liberty. And now we're all collectivists. We're all taking one for the team. So when you lift that up, you realize how horrible it is as you get into it. And once you turn, you can never really go back. And so those books really started getting me interested. And then, of course, Ron Paul was on the back of The Creature from Jekyll Island. And so I started hearing about him and seeing quotes from him and wondering, who's this Ron Paul guy? And that was about 10 years ago. And then being from West Virginia, there was an opportunity to run for U.S. Senate. So I said, what the heck, let me get my feet wet and see what's going on. And only lasted about 6 months. And then I ran for state office as a Ron Paul Republican, but that was in 2005. And so the first thing I did was call up Ron Paul's office, and they said, well, you sure you want to do this? You don't really want to do this. And they said, I talked to a lady in Texas, and she said, oh yeah, Newt Gingrich was down here in '96 campaigning against Ron Paul. And I said, really? What about Reagan's 11th commandment and all that? And she says, that doesn't matter. Newt Gingrich could care less. So you realize that there's been this war going on inside the Republican Party for years, and it's the liberty-minded folks versus the neocons, and that's what all Republicans are now. They're neoconservatives who are for war, for bombing the hell out of everybody with no consequences, and they've taken over the Republican Party, but they're really leftover socialists from back in the old day. William F. Buckley was actually a socialist, but people think he's a conservative. He's not. He was here to bring the peace-loving conservative movement over to the war, Bill Kristol, Richard Pearl, let's bomb everybody to death, Sean Hannity type of thinking. And they're basically just killers and chicken hawks who are afraid to go themselves. So I always want to, once you learn the liberty thing, once you learn about Ron Paul, Judge Napolitano, Lew Rockwell, you realize, well, I want to be in the liberty boat, not in the let's go kill kids over and overseas and let's spend a bunch of money and let's just be warmongers. I want to be on the liberty peace side. And that's the difference. I mean, that's where the divide is. You're either on it or not. You're either pregnant or not pregnant. And there's no in between.
The truth is important and it matters. And that's the amazing thing about Ron Paul is he speaks the truth and it matters to him. He really cares about people, and he doesn't want, he's the reluctant leader of this freedom movement. I mean, he's got no desire to stand up there and be the hero. I mean, even when people shower him with compliments or whatever, he's so humble. And to him, it's all about the ideas and the philosophy. And he's, I've said it before, like a modern day martyr for the cause, because he really cares about the people and individual freedom and liberty. The ideas matter.
Tens of millions of people who understand liberty. Ron Paul, run for your county office, run for your city office, run for dog catcher, run for state senate, House of Representatives, run for, U.S. Congress and Senate. It doesn't matter. It's just, if you know liberty, you should run for office and preserve your own liberty. And, that's why I'm all about, I want my own liberty back. That's the whole reason I'm doing this stuff. And it's been 10 years, and I'll continue to do it. But, God bless Ron Paul, and, this country would not be going in the right direction that it's starting to now. You're shifting the Titanic if it wasn't for Ron Paul. And, so if you're a neocon or a left-wing Democrat, get you some Ron Paul. Go check it out. Go check out why the Federal Reserve is a scam. Stealing from you should be very interesting. I find it very interesting if someone's scamming me or stealing my money. But, most liberals or neocons have no idea they're being stolen from. But they've been brainwashed to think that the government is good. It will always be good. It could never be bad. And when you learn, you pick up the rug, it's the most evil organization on the planet, really, one of them. And, we kind of are the terrorists. We go around and bomb people, and for no reason other than we're scared of them, And how about some diplomacy? How about some good spies? Something. But your first response, we're bombing 10 countries now. Well, what the is that? Why are we in 10 countries bombing the living out of little innocent, babies, Iraqi babies, or Libyan babies, or Yemen babies, and women? Oh, well, their leader is going to put a nuclear bomb on us, but they're faking all the data. They faked Saddam Hussein. It's just, war talk up for Iran. And, Iran's not stupid. If they send out one little missile, Israel will throw 300 nuclear missiles on Iran and take them out. The United States is way over here. But it's all like B-movie plots. Oh my God, it's just the dumbest plots you can think of is what the FBI and the CIA and the government all, they expect us to believe, and most of us believe it. Well, you're stupid, Wake up, use your brain. And that's why Ayn Rand's great too, is because she says, check your premises. I want to agree to disagree. Oh, we'll just agree to disagree. Oh, I can't think about that. No, think it through. And make your own decision, because God gave you a brain. And if God gave you free will and a brain, then use it. Don't parrot what Sean Hannity says or some, Hillary Clinton says, because you're parroting talking points for socialists and Marxists and feudalists and fascists and corporatists and collectivists, which are all the same thing.
If you stand up and say you're a communist and you vote like a communist, I may not agree with you, but that's integrity. But if you say that you're a Republican and you're a conservative and you like these values and you go and vote against conservatism and against the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, then you have no integrity with me.
One of the first things that really hit me when I was young about why liberty was important is when I was really involved and active in the church and took my faith pretty seriously. And at that time, I realized that not every country in the world had the ability, individuals have the ability to choose what religious faith they want to practice openly. And it also gave me a respect for the Constitution, because I started to understand that the government should not respect an establishment of religion, and that the rights of conscience would dictate that we each individually choose our own path.
Waking up for me, it was just a slow process of just reading and just changing my thinking and realizing I don't think like the establishment thinks. I don't believe everything the media says. But it was 2007 when I first heard about Ron Paul, and okay, I don't know much about him, but what I hear makes sense, and I'm going to vote for him. And couldn't be persuaded against that from that point on.
It's difficult as a musician to go on tour when you don't know what gas prices are going to be next month, and they rotate. They might shoot up $1 suddenly. That means your budget for your tour has gone up $3,000 or $4,000. These things for a month. These things are irrational economic absurdities we have to deal with. We have people that are being put in prisons for things that are not harming anyone else. We have people around the world dying in wars that make no sense. I kind of feel like it's personal responsibility of everyone in the liberty movement right now, mainly because we're so under threat. If we were under less threat, I might be more comfortable being a little bit more laid back and having more time to do other things. But we really have a huge mission in front of us, and the liberty movement is crucial right now for restoring human freedom so that human prosperity can happen.
What was the most important thing that Martin Luther King wanted for the American Negro? Equal opportunity to pursue their dreams like every other American citizen. Well, what is it that Ron Paul wants? He wants every American to have the opportunity to pursue happiness as well. And to do it, whether you're talking about Martin Luther King or Ron Paul, it requires freedoms.
In 2008, of course, I was like everybody else. They wanted Ron Paul, but they just didn't vote for him because they didn't think he could win. Of course, we've all heard the slogan say, like, hey, if everybody that would say, like, I like Ron Paul, but I don't think he can win, would vote for him, if all those people were to vote, he would win. But anyways, regardless, he's the most honest politician, probably in most recent history. But I know that all politicians give their best, but they don't really do a clear message for the Constitution, like preserving it and everything. They can always say all this and all that, and while I try to preserve the Constitution, Ron Paul actually does that.
The Constitution is supposed to protect us from the government, and the government is claiming that they can protect us. And anytime that you start hearing that, it's time to be afraid. And I heard a quote recently that said, the government should be afraid of its people and not the other way around. And so I think we've got a candidate who is not only promising to balance the budget, and he's actually laid out a clear plan for that, but we've also got someone who says, I promise I'll protect your constitutional rights. And so I guess for me, it's like the reason I got involved is our forefathers had to fight and die for our freedom. And if all I have to do is stand here and hold a sign or get on a phone and call someone and give them some facts about Ron Paul, or go knock on someone's door, that's all it takes. I can definitely do that because those guys fought and died so I could stand here today and not have to shut up about my opinion.
I started getting interested in politics in my senior year of high school, and we were debating issues, and I was noticing I'd really agree with these social issues. I don't know, I considered myself a Democrat at that time, but then I was starting to look at these economic issues and wondering, why do Democrats restrict our freedom in this area? So I was wondering, where do I fit in this political spectrum? And then I found Ron Paul, and I feel like for him it's not one issue, or the other issue. It's much more than that. It's philosophical. It's personal freedom, economic and social, whereas Democrats and Republicans tend to neglect one or the other. So that's why I support Ron Paul.
In 2011, I started watching the debates, and I just wanted to know the best option. I just wanted to educate myself. And I started to hear Ron Paul and his message, and at first, I really loved what he said, and I just thought, well, he's a little radical. But the more I started to listen, and the more I started to question, and the more I started to do my own research, I figured out that this guy is actually telling us, the only one telling us the truth, and the only one answering the questions. And I've realized the reason why he has the movement and the passion that he has, and I'm a part of it now.
I'm to that point now where if I don't do something now, I'll just regret it later, because we're right on the edge. I can't see things going too much worse before there's some kind of weird economic collapse. So I think we're like the last run for liberty here, as far as a peaceful restoration, and that's why I'm here. You know, I have a daughter, I have family, I have people that I care about. I want this place to continue being a decent place to live.
Most personal thing about what happened to me this week with Ron Paul probably was just talking to people. Just going throughout your life, whether you're at the grocery store or at the drive-thru or wherever, I always have a Ron Paul button on. I had one on my chest, but I just gave it away to someone who was walking by. And people are open to his message of freedom. People are tired of government intervening in their lives, spying on them through the Patriot Act, taxing them every step they take. And I was at the drive-thru the other day, and a lady saw my Ron Paul bumper sticker, and I gave her a sign and a bumper sticker. I told her when to vote. I mean, just things like that just kind of happen out of the blue, and that's the free market. You know, we're all volunteers here. None of us are, being paid by the campaign. We're doing this because we believe in the message of freedom. We believe in the free market. We believe in you make your own choices, and whatever choices you make, you're responsible for the consequences, and that's what we're advocating today.
Whenever you became a supporter, did you receive a lot of opposition from your family or friends?
Oh yeah, I'm actually have a lot of opposition right now. A friend of mine in Florida, we battle back and forth on Facebook, and I think he's said he's going for Santorum, and I've always posted my Ron Paul stuff, and he has called me everything from a liberal to trying to bring in the Antichrist, and it's crazy how people will attack you when you're voting for the only person that's telling any truth out there. So I've certainly got enough opposition from him and just other friends of mine that just don't get it. They don't get that the president that they're looking for and wanting to vote for actually exists in Ron Paul.
From what I've studied, we're in a really fun time and a great time, but it's really important to try to preserve the Constitution, because not many people do. They think it's normal for it to be redone or remade, or they think it's normal for the government to pay for all these things because that's the lifestyle that we're in today.
I tend to hear that Ron Paul isn't very compassionate on issues such as, poverty or health care or things like that. And I try to explain to my peers that it's really not about cradle to grave government support. It's about the individual and letting him strive to support himself. And a lot of people won't understand that, but once they understand the concept of individual freedom, I feel like it is going to come naturally, and it came naturally for me in that sense.
Most voters, I would assume, turn the TV on for their information. To me, that's the biggest problem. I mean, if you look at TV, they're never going to tell you the truth. They're not going to tell you that Ron Paul is the #1 choice among the troops, active military. And that's, it's not a mystery that Ron Paul's been getting constantly debased in the media. He's never had a fair shot. They constantly give him, they don't give him the same attention that they give the other candidates, because he's not a candidate working for the establishment. He's a candidate for the people. We haven't had that for a long time. That's why it's so dangerous to them. That's why they'll do whatever they can to try and demonize him, make him look bad. And it's just not going to work anymore. People are waking up, There's a Ron Paul revolution going on. and they can't stop it now. It doesn't matter what they do. I mean, God forbid that they kill the man. But even if they kill Ron Paul tomorrow, it's not going to stop this movement. We're going for a win here. And to me, a win is a restoration of America.
As a country, we don't have any more money. Statistically, according to the Secretary of State, we are giving 3 times as much money to Israel's Arab enemies as we are to Israel. So that is just not, to me, it's not a good argument when we say, well, we got to protect Israel and, you know, Ron Paul's foreign policy is not good or whatever. I personally think it's the best one out there. I've got cousins that are in the military, and once our country starts to fall economically, I really don't want them to be out on some base in a foreign country and not have aid to get back here. So I think we do need to start bringing some people home. I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we don't have a presence in places around the world that we need to be. I think it's just, you know, for the sake of holding Obama's feet to the fire when he says that he's going to start bringing the troops home. He hasn't really done that. If anything, he's put more troops on the ground in other countries. So when you've got Ron Paul up there who's saying, I will bring the troops home, he's really the only candidate who could make Obama start fulfilling those promises. And I think that's part of why Obama got elected, is because people wanted their sons, their daughters, their nieces and nephews to come home. And he hasn't really done that. So if we get someone like Romney or Santorum in there debating with Obama, Obama doesn't need to be accountable to the things that he promised before, because you've got other candidates who want to start more wars.
You know, I've tried the moral argument, I've tried the constitutional argument on these issues, and they don't go so well. But there's an economic argument as well. Matter of fact, Al-Qaeda's had a plan to bog us down in the Middle East and bankrupt this country. That's exactly what they're doing. We've spent $4 trillion of debt in the last 10 years being bogged down in the Middle East. The neoconservatives who now want us to be in Syria, want us to go to Iran and have another war. And we don't have the money. We're already, today, gasoline hit $6 a gallon in Florida, and we don't have the money. So I don't believe I'm going to get the conversion on the moral and the constitutional arguments in the near future, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to win this argument for economic reasons. Just remember when the Soviets left. They left not because we had to fight them, they left because they bankrupted this country, and we better wake up, because that is what we're doing here. We're destroying our currency, and we have a financial crisis on our hands.
He'll stand up for his principles no matter what. And I've never seen that in a politician before. I mean, in a debate, he'll say, he doesn't care if he gets booed. I mean, he'll tell the truth. And he's not about telling people what they want to hear. He's about telling them what they need to hear.
I want to know what Ron Paul's plan of action will be to achieve getting the House and Senate to help him do all he's promised. And here's the record, Dr. Paul. You have actually sponsored 620 measures. Only 4 made it to a vote on the House floor, and only 1 has been signed into law.
You know, that demonstrates how much out of touch the U.S. government and the U.S. Congress is with the American people, because I'm supporting things that help the American people. That's the disgust that people have, because they keep growing government, whether it's the Republicans in charge or the Democrats in charge. But as far as working with other groups, I think my record is about as good as anybody's, because I work on the principle that freedom and the Constitution bring people together for different reasons. People use freedom in different ways, like it does. It invites variations in our religious beliefs, in economic beliefs. We tell people that they're allowed to, to spend their money as they choose. On civil liberties, that's a different segment. Republican conservatives aren't all that well known for protecting privacy and personal liberties. And when it comes to this spending overseas, I can work a coalition. Matter of fact, my $1 trillion proposal to cut spending doesn't immediately deal with Social Security. It's to try to work our way out of Social Security. I'm cutting $1 trillion by attacking overseas spending and going back to '06 budget. And I do not believe that you have to have pain. People who have gotten special privileges and bailouts from the government, they may get the pain, but the American people, if they get their freedom back and get no income tax, they don't suffer any pain.
I see so many politicians that are all about image and wearing the right tie and having their hair done the right way, and
saying exactly the right soundbite, and he's not about any of that. I mean, you cannot boil down Ron Paul's beliefs into these neat little sound bites. It just doesn't happen. But this country is not facing problems that can be solved by sound bites. You know, I love in a debate, I feel like people kind of disconnect from what he's saying, but the truth is that he is honestly trying to educate people as to, you know, what the issues are and what the solutions are. And he doesn't just try to give you some, you know, really shiny answer that people are going to like and clap for. He really tries to go in depth into what the issue is.
Ron Paul, he was rocking on all the debates. Of course, there was the one debate where he got 89 seconds, and everybody was like, that's when the Ron Paul people kind of blew up. I mean, we were all angry about that one. He'd been kind of hosed in debates in the past. They hadn't given him as much time as the rest of the candidates. But when he got 89 seconds, it was, gosh, what was it, October? I forget. It really lit the Ron Paul people up, and other people that weren't even supporting Ron Paul realized that he was getting jacked around.
One of my favorite moments was when they said, use one word to describe yourself, and Ron Paul said, consistent.
Without caveats or explanations, please define yourself using one word and one word only. Congressman Paul?
Consistent. You know, it's the one thing that has really resonated with me in following Ron Paul, and then to hear him say that and to hear everybody clap and have to kind of be hit in the face of that was really cool.
I just remember there was one moment in the South Carolina debate where Ron Paul got a question about an attack ad that he had made towards Santorum. And they asked him if he regretted it, and he said the only thing he regretted was that he didn't have time to put more of the things he opposed about Santorum in the ad. And it was just it was kind of almost uncharacteristic of Ron Paul, because he's always so gracious. And that wasn't a hateful comment as much as it was just the truth. And he said it like that. He was like, you know, it wasn't a slam or a burn. It was just, that was the truth, was there were things that he wished he could have put in that commercial so that people knew about, you know, Santorum's record. But it was just such a, you know, here Ron Paul gets beat up on all the time, but he actually came back and, you know, had this great comeback in the debate. And we just all were yelling and clapping in the phone bank. Because it was a great moment to really see him come out with the gloves. He took the gloves off.
Governor Huntsman said the Republican presidential race has, quote, degenerated into an onslaught of negative and personal attacks not worthy of the American people. You have been particularly scathing in your ads against the other candidates up here on stage tonight. Do you agree with Governor Huntsman that these attacks should be abandoned?
Well, they should be abandoned if you're not telling the truth. But if you're exposing a voting record, I think it's quite proper. There was one ad that we used against Senator Santorum, and I only had one problem, is I couldn't get all the things in I wanted to say in 1 minute. But, you know, we mentioned No Child Left Behind, and that he supported deficits ×5, raising the national debt, and that he voted for prescription drug programs, and as well as he voted against right to work. And I could have added, you know, things like he voted for Sarbanes-Oxley. So my only regret is that I couldn't get enough in that 1 minute that I should have.
Congressman Paul.
Ron Paul called Rick Santorum a fake. I was cracking up. He's like, well, why do you call him a fake? He's like, because he is a fake.
Congressman Paul, you've questioned the fiscal conservative credentials of all these gentlemen, but particularly this week, Senator Santorum. You have a new television ad that labels him a fake. Why?
Because he's a fake.
I'm real, man. I'm real.
Congratulations.
I'm real. Thank you.
No, I find it really fascinating that when
people are running for office, they're really fiscally conservative. When they're in office, they do something different, and then when they explain themselves, they say, oh, I want to repeal that. So the senator voted for No Child Left Behind, but now he voted for it, but now he's running on the effort to get rid of it. So I think the record is so bad, you know, with the politicians. And, yeah, you know, nobody accuses me of not having voted for too much. They're always accusing me for not voting for enough. And I've been running in office off and on for a good many years. And over all those years, I've never voted for a budget deficit. I never voted to increase the national debt. Matter of fact, there's only one appropriation bill that I voted for, and that was for veterans. I assumed from the 1970s on that we were embarking on a very dangerous path, and we're involved in that danger right now. So this idea of being fiscally conservative now that we're running for office and we're going to repeal something that we did before, I mean, it loses credibility is what our problem is. So, and the one thing that I think should annoy all Americans is the voting for foreign aid. I mean, just think, their foreign aid packages are huge, and when the member votes for it, they don't say, well, this money's going to ABC because I love that country, but it's the principle of the way the government works. You vote for foreign aid because for some weird reason it's supposed to be good for America, but then it goes and helps all our enemies. That's what I disapprove of.
Senator Santorum, respond quickly.
Ron, the Weekly Standard just did a review looking at the national taxpayer unions, I think Citizens Against Government Waste, and they measured me up against the other 50 senators who were serving when I did, and they said that I was the most fiscally conservative senator in the Congress in the 12 years that I was there. My ratings with the national taxpayer unions were A's or B's. They were very high from the Citizens Against Government Waste. I got a Hero Award. I was a leader, as you know, on taking on tough issues, which is the entitlement programs, not just welfare reform, but I also worked on Medicare reform and Medicaid reform, and also was a leader on trying to deal with Social Security. And I did that not representing one of the most conservative districts in the state of Texas, but in the state of Pennsylvania, with the second largest per capita population of seniors in the country. And I can tell you, those seniors really cared about Social Security. Why? Because all my rich seniors moved to Florida and Arizona. And what's left in Pennsylvania is folks who relied on Social Security. And I was out there as a Republican senator, a conservative voting record, over a 90% conservative voting record from the American Conservative Union. By the way, Ron, you ranked 145th in the bottom half of Republicans this year in a conservative voting record from that same organization. We had a strong record in a tough state to be a conservative. If I can stand up in the state of Pennsylvania, which hasn't elected a Republican president since 1988, and have a strong principled voting record on issues that were tough in my state, senior issues. Imagine now, as the President of the United States, with a Tea Party movement and a riled-up conservative base, what we can accomplish in Washington, D.C.
Congressman Quickly.
You know, that's always a cop-out when you compare yourself to the other members of Congress. The American people are sick and tired of the members of Congress. They get about 9% rating. But this whole thing about comparison of conservative votes, I think you make a very important point. I don't rate one at the top. If it's spending or on taxes, I'm at the very top because I vote for the least amount of spending and the least amount of taxes, which means that some of the conservative ratings, you have to realize, sometimes conservatives want to spend money too. When it comes to overseas spending, you vote for the foreign aid. Conservatives are quite pleased with spending money overseas, but if you're a strict fiscal conservative and a constitutionalist, you don't vote for that kind of stuff, and so you can't just go by the ratings.
Right now we have one veteran left in the race, and that's Ron Paul. And I absolutely, you know, that's important to me, that the man didn't run, that he could have opted out. Newt Gingrich opted out. You know, one of the ones that was so quick to want to have our troops spread everywhere. You know, one of these bloodlusting cheerleaders. I think it's disgusting to have somebody like Newt Gingrich run his mouth about where our troops need to go when he got excused for serving. And Ron Paul, you know, that was a father with children. served our country, I absolutely feel patriot as a veteran, supporting somebody like Ron Paul that's been there and didn't shirk his duty, but stood up like a man and, you know, served his country like he was supposed to.
I think people who don't serve when they could and they get 3 or 4 or even 5 deferments aren't. They have no right to send our kids off to war and not be even against the wars that we have. I'm trying to stop the wars, but at least, you know, I went when they called me up. But, you know, the veterans problem is a big one. We have hundreds of thousands coming back from these wars that were undeclared, they were unnecessary, they haven't been won, they're unwinnable. We have hundreds of thousands looking for care. And we have an epidemic of suicide coming back. And so many have, I mean, if you add up all the contractors and all the wars going on in Afghanistan and in Iraq, we've lost 8,500 Americans and severe injuries over 40,000. And these are undeclared wars. So Rick keeps saying you don't want this libertarian stuff, but what I'm talking about, I don't bring up the word, you do, but I talk about the Constitution. Constitution has rules, and I don't like it when we send our kids off to fight these wars, and when those individuals didn't go themselves, and then come up and when they're asked, they say, oh, I don't think one person could have made a difference. I have a pet peeve that annoys me to a great deal, because when I see these young men coming back, my heart weeps for them.
Speaker Gingrich.
Well, Dr. Paul has a long history of saying things that are inaccurate and false. The fact is, I never asked for deferment. I was married with a child. It was never a question. My father was, in fact, serving in Vietnam in the Mekong Delta at the time he's referring to. I think I have a pretty good idea of what it's like as a family to worry about your father getting killed, and I personally resent the kind of comments and aspersions he routinely makes without accurate information and then just slurs people with.
I need one quick follow-up. When I was drafting, I was married and had 2 kids, and I went.
I wasn't eligible for the draft. I wasn't eligible for the draft.
Talked about how we overthrew an elected government in 1953 in Iran. You know, the blowback from that was 1979. And he goes into how we've been propping up Mubarak. This was before, of course, we overthrew Mubarak. But rather, we didn't overthrow him before his people overthrew him. But we propped up a dictator. We gave him billions of dollars because he ruled with an iron fist, and we like that. He served our interests over there. But then we don't, you know, the American people don't know this. They don't know that we've been throwing money at these dictators and been killing millions and millions of people too. And that incites hate with the people, because the people know that we're giving the money to their dictator who's killing them, telling the people in America, our government's telling people in America that, oh, we're not doing anything. You know, we're just helping freedom. No, we're helping a dictator who's killing people. And we don't think they're going to be mad. It's absurd. So, you know, Ron Paul really, that moment right there when he talked about that, it was just like, wow, it makes so much sense. And then, of course, went back and studied it and realized that everything he said was true. He was speaking the truth, and that's a powerful thing. When you hear the truth for the first time, I mean, it's amazing. And I knew he was the man right there.
Congressman Paul, I believe you are the only man on the stage who opposes the war in Iraq, who would bring the troops home as quickly as almost immediately, sir. Are you out of step with your party? Is your party out of step with the rest of the world? If either of those is the case, why are you seeking its nomination?
Well, I think the party has lost its way because the conservative wing of the Republican Party always advocated a non-interventionist foreign policy. Senator Robert Taft didn't even want to be in NATO. George Bush won the election in year 2000 campaigning on a humble foreign policy, no nation building, no policing of the world. Republicans were elected to end the Korean War. The Republicans were elected to end the Vietnam War. There's a strong tradition of being anti-war in the Republican Party. It is the constitutional position. It is the advice of the founders to follow a non-interventionist foreign policy. Stay out of entangling alliances. Be friends with countries. Negotiate and talk with them and trade with them. Just think of the tremendous improvement relationships with Vietnam. We lost 60,000 3,000 men. We came home in defeat. Now we go over there and invest in Vietnam. So there's a lot of merit to the advice of the founders and following the Constitution. And my argument is that we shouldn't go to war so carelessly. When we do, the wars don't end.
Congressman, you don't think that changed with the 9/11 attack, sir?
What changed?
The non-interventionist policies.
No, non-intervention was a major contributing factor. Have you ever read about the reasons they attacked us? They attack us because we've been over there. We've been bombing Iraq for 10 years. We've been in the Middle East. I think Reagan was right. We don't understand the irrationality of Middle Eastern politics. So right now we're building an embassy in Iraq that's bigger than the Vatican. We're building 14 permanent bases. What would we say here if China was doing this in our country or in the Gulf of Mexico? We would be objecting. We need to look at what we do from the perspective of what would happen if somebody else did it to us.
Are you suggesting we invited the 9/11 attack, sir?
I'm suggesting that we listen to the people who attacked us and the reason they did it. And they are delighted that we're over there because Osama bin Laden has said, I am glad you're over on our sand because we can target you so much easier. They have already now, since that time, have killed 3,400 of our men, and I don't think it was necessary.
Wendell, may I make a comment on that? That's really an extraordinary statement. It's an extraordinary statement of someone who lived through the attack of September 11, that we invited the attack because we were attacking Iraq. I don't think I've ever heard that before, and I've heard some pretty absurd explanations for September 11. I would ask the congressman to withdraw that comment and tell us that he didn't really mean that.
Congressman?
I believe very sincerely that the CIA is correct when they teach and talk about blowback. When we went into Iran in 1953 and installed the Shah, yes, there was blowback. The reaction to that was the taking of our hostages, and that persists. And if we ignore that at our own risk. That if we think that we can do what we want around the world and not incite hatred, then we have a problem. They don't come here to attack us because we're rich and we're free. They come and they attack us because we're over there. I mean, what would we think if we were, if other foreign countries were doing that to us?
Can I have 30 seconds, please?
No, wait a second. Our generation wants unfiltered reality. We want you to tell us the truth. We don't care about presentation. We don't care how slick something looks. I think our generation doesn't believe in Mitt Romney and Barack Obama type speech.
We've all done our research. We've done our homework. We know what we're talking about. It's not just a topic of conversation, whereas that kind of seems to be what everybody else is. You mark R or you mark D and you're part of the group. Whereas with Ron Paul supporters, you're an individual, and you go do whatever you need to do, and you take responsibility for yourselves, and you take responsibility for your thoughts and your actions, and who you're going to vote for. You understand the principles. You understand what's going on each individual issue before you start speaking about it. It's not just, something comes up like the NDA, and all of my friends are all over it. We're researching, we're trying to figure out what's going on, what's exactly in this, why haven't we heard about it before, why is it just now coming up? And we know what's up, whereas everybody else, you're like, so do you, have you heard about the NDA? Like, no, is that something to do with the NFL, NBA? There's no, it's a different world. It's a different group of people.